And the district attorney in Aransas County is speaking out now about 3 law enforcement officials who are facing various charges of misconduct. This after a grand jury found enough evidence to indict the men in separate cases this week. One of those cases dating back to 2 years. Our Bill Churchwell reports.
The defendants named in court documents are Salvador Champa, Chad Brooks, and Austin Cox.
It is this office's position and duty to find justice for the victims of Aransas County.
The Aransas County District Attorney Kristen Barnaby tells us the indictment against Deputy Austin Cox, who is no longer with the sheriff's office, indicates he is facing a charge of aggravated assault on a public servant. The alleged crime occurring earlier this month on June 5th, when Cox is said to have pointed a gun at a Rockport police officer.
Department police chief, who was at the scene when this crime occurred with Austin Cox, reached out to our office.
And Kelsey Downey is the first assistant district attorney.
It's our office as a district attorney and county attorney's responsibility to make sure that justice is sought for that Rockport Police Department who had a gun shoved in his chest.
This second case involves former Rockport police officer Chad Brooks. He stands accused of tampering with a government record. According to the indictment in 2018, Brooks allegedly made a false entry stating he had worked for 4 hours with the intent to defraud the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
Here's the deal.
You might recall it was just a year earlier that Brooks was involved in another situation in which he captured a secret recording during a meeting with Downing. It's something that created bad blood between police and the DA's office and resulted in the district attorney not accepting cases from the police department. That has since changed. The DA citing a stronger relationship with the new police chief, Greg Stevens, who took over the department last year.
It is his efforts, in part, that brought this case forward.
The final indictment involves Salvador Champa, who is currently deputy chief of the detention center in Aransas County. He's accused of obstruction and retaliation. According to the indictment, in 2019, Champa threatened to harm a public servant by telling her, quote, to watch what she said in court.
The victim in that case came forward and asked about what was happening and if she could make a complaint. And of course, our office accepted that complaint.
Bill Churchwell, 3 News.